She had always loved music more than anything else. From the moment she could reach the keys of the old, worn piano in her living room, she would spend hours pressing the black and white keys, trying to make the notes sing the way she heard them in her mind. The piano had scratches and a few keys that stuck, but it never stopped her from practicing. Every day, after school, she would rush home, drop her bag by the door, and sit in front of the instrument, letting the music flow from her fingers. Her family noticed her dedication, but they were practical people. They told her it was fine to enjoy music, but it could not be a real career. They reminded her that there were bills to pay and that she needed a steady job in the future. She would smile and nod, but inside, she felt a fire that could not be dimmed by anyone's doubt. Music was more than a hobby for her. It was the way she understood the world. At school, she was quiet, often lost in her thoughts. Some classmates found it strange that she preferred playing piano over talking to them or joining sports. They would sometimes make jokes, calling her names or laughing when she mentioned music. First, it hurt. She would go home and cry quietly, wondering if she was wasting her time. But then she would sit at the piano, and all her worries would melt away with the first note she played. The music reminded her of who she really was. Her teacher noticed her talent early on. During one music class, while others struggled to play simple scales, she could already perform small pieces with emotion and understanding far beyond her age. The teacher encouraged her, giving her extra lessons after school, showing her techniques, and explaining the nuances of different composers. She listened carefully, absorbing everything, practicing late into the night while the rest of the house slept. Sometimes her fingers would ache, and her back would hurt from sitting too long, but she never complained. The piano felt like an extension of her own body, and each note was a part of her story. Her first big opportunity came when a local music club announced a youth competition. She hesitated at first, thinking that it was not for someone like her. But her teacher insisted. "You have to show people what you can do," they said. The thought of performing in front of others made her nervous, but it also excited her. For weeks, she prepared, choosing a challenging piece that spoke to her soul, a piece that told a story of struggle, hope, and beauty. Every day, she practiced until the notes were perfect, making sure her expression, her timing, and her feeling were all in place. When the day of the competition arrived, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. She looked at the other participants, some of whom had been performing publicly for years. They seemed confident, wearing fancy clothes and smiling easily. She felt small and unsure, clutching her sheet music tightly as she waited for her turn. Her stomach twisted with nerves, and she wondered if she was making a mistake by stepping into the spotlight. She reminded herself of all the hours she had spent practicing, of the sacrifices she had made, and of the love she had for the music. That love gave her courage. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, her heart beating fast. The lights were bright, and she could feel the eyes of the audience on her. Some faces were polite, but others seemed skeptical, judging her before she even played. She took a deep breath, sat down on the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, the world disappeared. It was just her and the piano, and the notes waiting to be played. The first few chords came out softly, carefully, like a whisper. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her, feeling every rise and fall, every tension and release. The audience began to notice the depth of her playing. Her hands moved with precision, but also with a feeling that could not be taught. Each note seemed to carry a story, each pause a message. The more she played, the more her confidence grew, and the more she poured herself into the music, forgetting the nerves, the doubts, and the skeptics. After she finished, there was a moment of silence. She opened her eyes and saw that some people were staring, surprised, even stunned. A few whispered to each other, trying to process what they had just heard. Her teacher, standing at the side of the stage, smiled and gave her a subtle nod, proud of how she had expressed herself. She felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. This was just the beginning, she thought. She wanted to play more, to share more, to let the world hear the music that lived inside her. Backstage, she was congratulated by a few judges, who praised her skill and emotion. But not everyone was kind. Some of the other participants whispered and rolled their eyes, clearly unimpressed or even jealous. They could not understand how someone so quiet and seemingly ordinary could play with such power. She felt a pang of sadness, but she quickly brushed it off. She realized that not everyone would appreciate her music, and that was okay. She was not playing to please them. She was playing to be true to herself. That night, when she returned home, she sat at her piano once more. She played the piece again, slowly, feeling every note, every emotion. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the lonely hours of practice, the moments of doubt, and the tiny victories along the way. She realized that this was her path, and though it would be difficult, it was hers to follow. She smiled to herself, feeling both tired and alive, knowing that this was only the first step of many. The days after her first public performance were filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She could not stop thinking about the audience, the lights, and the way the piano had felt under her fingers. Some messages and comments were kind, praising her talent and dedication, but others were cruel. People online and in her town had started to mock her, calling her names and saying that she was trying too hard or that she would never make it. At first, she tried to ignore them, focusing on the small group of people who believed in her, but the words still stung. At school, the situation grew worse. Some students whispered behind her back, laughing when she passed. Teachers noticed her quiet demeanor but did not always understand why she seemed distracted. She would sit in the music room during breaks, practicing small pieces on a keyboard the school had, trying to keep her focus on what mattered. The laughter and mockery followed her, though, and there were moments when she questioned herself. Was she really talented? Or was she just imagining it? Her friends in the music club were supportive, but even they could not shield her from the ridicule outside. One day, as she practiced a particularly difficult piece, a group of students entered the music room uninvited, sneering and making jokes about her playing. "Do you really think anyone cares about your piano?" one of them asked, and another laughed so loudly that it echoed off the walls. She froze for a moment, feeling her confidence waver, but then she remembered the hours she had spent practicing, the nights she had stayed awake learning every nuance of the piece. She took a deep breath and continued playing, letting the music speak louder than their words. The experience taught her something important. People would always try to bring others down, sometimes out of jealousy, sometimes out of ignorance. She realized that mocking others did not define her ability, but her own response to it did. Each day, she learned to tune out the cruel comments and focus on the joy and emotion that music brought her. Still, the fear of public judgment lingered, making her nervous about any upcoming performance. One afternoon, she received news about a larger music competition in a city several hours away. The announcement included a long list of participants, many of whom were already well known in music circles. Her heart sank a little, thinking about the possibility of being ridiculed again, but she also felt a spark of determination. This was an opportunity to prove, not just to the world but to herself, that she was capable of greatness. She told herself that she could not let the fear of others' opinions stop her from pursuing her dream. As the competition approached, she spent hours preparing. She selected a piece that challenged her technical skills and allowed her to express deep emotion. Every day, she practiced from morning until late at night, memorizing every note and perfecting every transition. She imagined herself on the stage, facing a skeptical audience, and she practiced finding courage in her own hands, in her own music. Each day, her confidence grew a little, but the worry of being mocked never completely disappeared. The day of the competition arrived, and the city was buzzing with activity. She had never performed in such a large venue before. The hall was grand, with high ceilings, bright lights, and rows of seats stretching out into the distance. She could hear other participants warming up, their fingers gliding effortlessly across the piano keys. Some sounded better than anything she had ever heard. She felt a twinge of doubt, but she reminded herself of her own preparation, of all the hours she had invested in this moment. Backstage, She noticed the other participants exchanging confident smiles and greetings. Some gave her polite nods, while others barely acknowledged her presence. She felt small in comparison, but she focused on her breathing, reminding herself that her music had value, no matter what others thought. A few moments later, the announcer called her name, and she walked toward the stage, her heart pounding. When she sat at the piano, the bright lights made it hard to see the audience clearly, but she could hear their murmurs and whispers. Some were curious, some skeptical. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the familiar texture beneath her fingers, and closed her eyes. She thought about all the times she had been ridiculed, all the moments she had doubted herself, and she decided that she would let that pain fuel her performance. The first notes rang out soft but steady. She allowed herself to get lost in the music, letting it guide her fingers. Slowly, the whispers in the audience faded, replaced by focused attention. Her hands moved with precision and emotion, telling a story that no words could capture. She played with a mixture of technical skill and heartfelt feeling, her music rising and falling like a conversation between her and the audience. With every chord, she felt the skepticism in the room begin to shift. Halfway through the piece, she noticed a few people leaning forward, their expressions changing from doubt to awe. Some whispered to each other, clearly impressed by her talent. She felt a surge of confidence, realizing that her music had the power to transform the room, to change minds, to silence mockery. She continued playing, pouring all her emotion into each note, letting the story of her journey unfold through the music. As she reached the final notes, she felt a sense of triumph and release. The last chord lingered in the air, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then the applause began. At first, a few scattered claps, then more, until the entire hall erupted in cheers. She looked up, seeing smiles on faces that had once been skeptical or dismissive. She could feel the energy of the audience, their admiration washing over her. The mockery that had haunted her for so long felt like a distant memory, replaced by the overwhelming recognition of her talent. Backstage, she was greeted by judges and fellow participants who offered congratulations and praise. Some of the people who had been skeptical now looked genuinely impressed. She realized that while criticism and ridicule could be painful, the true measure of her skill came from her own dedication and the impact of her music on others. That night, she went back to her hotel room and sat at a small keyboard she had brought along, playing quietly. The music comforted her, reminding her of why she had chosen this path and why she would continue to pursue it, no matter what anyone else said. The experience taught her a valuable lesson. She understood that people would always have opinions, some kind and some cruel, but that her passion, perseverance, and love for music were stronger than any ridicule. She promised herself that she would continue to play, to grow, and to share her music with the world, not for the approval of others, but for the joy it brought her and those who truly listened. And in that moment, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that no amount of mockery could ever take away the music in her heart. When the day of the big performance arrived, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervous tension in her chest. She had prepared for this moment for months, practicing every detail of her piece until it became a part of her. Still, as she stepped into the grand concert hall, her stomach twisted with nerves. The seats stretched endlessly before her, filled with faces she could not yet read, some curious, some doubtful. The bright stage lights made the air feel heavier, but she reminded herself that she was ready. She took a deep breath and focused on the piano, letting her hands feel the familiar keys beneath her fingers. The audience murmured as she walked to the bench. Some whispered about her small frame, thinking she could not possibly fill the hall with sound. Others had heard of her previous performances but doubted that a young, relatively unknown pianist could captivate a crowd. She felt their eyes on her, but instead of shrinking, she let their skepticism fuel her determination. She sat down, adjusted the sheet music one last time, and closed her eyes. For a moment, the world disappeared, leaving only her and the piano. The first notes came softly, tentative but full of feeling. Her fingers moved with precision, striking each key with care, producing a melody that felt both delicate and alive. She closed her eyes and let the music guide her, imagining the story she wanted to tell through sound. Each chord carried emotion, each pause a message. Slowly, the audience began to lean in, their curiosity overtaking their initial doubt. The hall, which had seemed overwhelming moments ago, became a space where her music could breathe and take shape. As the piece progressed, her confidence grew. Her hands moved effortlessly across the keys, switching between soft, tender passages and bold, dramatic moments. Every note seemed to capture her journey. The long hours of practice, the moments of doubt, the feeling of being ridiculed, and the triumphs she had achieved in private. The audience was drawn into her story without her saying a word. Some faces softened, others widened with surprise, and a few leaned forward, trying to catch every nuance. She could feel the tension in the room shift. The skeptics, who had judged her before she played, now sat silently, captivated. The critics, who had expected a performance lacking in depth, were leaning forward in their seats, their expressions revealing a mix of surprise and admiration. She realized that the music had the power to transform doubt into respect, to turn mockery into awe. Her nerves melted away with each measure, replaced by the joy of sharing her passion and connecting with the audience. Halfway through, she reached the more challenging sections of the piece. The tempo changed rapidly, requiring precision and quick reflexes. Her fingers danced across the keys, striking each note with clarity and emotion. She felt her heart racing, not from fear, but from the thrill of the moment. The music flowed naturally, as if it were a conversation between her and the people listening. She could sense the audience holding their breath, waiting for what would come next, and she let herself be carried by the rhythm and feeling of the composition. During the quieter parts, she added subtle expressions, gentle pauses, and soft touches that spoke volumes. The sound of the piano filled every corner of the hall, and she noticed how the listeners seemed to be leaning closer, drawn in by the depth of her performance. She realized that this was more than a recital. It was a connection between her soul and the hearts of the people who had come to watch. Their silence was not empty. It was full of attention, appreciation, and growing admiration. As she approached the climax of the piece, her movements became more intense and expressive. She let herself fully feel the music, allowing every note to carry emotion and meaning. The audience reacted subtly at first, some shifting in their seats, others with wide eyes, but slowly the energy in the hall began to change. What had started as curiosity and skepticism now turned into fascination and wonder. People who had whispered doubts earlier now sat entranced, unable to take their eyes off her hands moving across the keys. The final moments of the piece were breathtaking. She allowed each note to linger, emphasizing the emotion she had poured into the music. The crescendo built naturally, sweeping through the hall like a wave of feeling. When she struck the last chord, it resonated deeply, filling the space with a lingering sense of beauty and completion. For a moment, there was complete silence. She opened her eyes and looked at the audience, unsure how they would react. Then, the applause began, soft at first, then louder and louder until the entire hall erupted in cheers. The sound was overwhelming, and she felt a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. Standing ovations followed, with people rising from their seats, clapping and shouting in appreciation. Some of the judges and critics approached her, smiling and shaking their heads in amazement. "I have never heard anything like that," one said quietly, still in disbelief. Others nodded in agreement, clearly impressed by her talent and expression. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, realizing that the music had spoken for her when words could not. Backstage, fellow participants approached her with congratulations. Some who had seemed confident and dismissive before now admitted they had been surprised by her skill and emotion. She felt a mix of humility and pride. She knew she had performed at her best, sharing not just notes, but the story of her journey, the struggles, and the passion that had carried her this far. The mockery she had faced before seemed like a distant memory, replaced by admiration and respect. Later, as she left the concert hall, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had shown her that fear and doubt could be overcome with preparation, passion, and courage. She understood that performing was not just about impressing others, but about expressing herself and connecting with the hearts of those who listened. The power of music, she realized, was not only in its technical perfection, but in its ability to communicate emotion and truth. That night, alone in her hotel room, she played the piece again on a small keyboard she had brought. The notes felt different now, infused with the memory of the audience's reaction, their awe, and the energy of the applause. She played slowly, savoring each moment, feeling grateful for the journey that had brought her here. Every note reminded her that talent and hard work could triumph over doubt and ridicule, and that her love for music was stronger than any judgment. She reflected on the day and the people who had doubted her. She understood that their words had not defined her. What mattered was her own belief, her dedication, and her willingness to share her gift. The performance had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more critics, and more moments of uncertainty, but she felt ready to face them. Her music had found its voice, and with it, she had found hers. The applause from her previous performance had been unforgettable, but she knew that the next stage was even bigger. This was not just a competition. It was a chance to play in front of a critical audience that included renowned musicians, critics, and people who had come expecting to see talent, but also to judge harshly. She felt a flutter of nerves in her chest as she stepped into the massive concert hall. The ceiling stretched high above her, the chandeliers glinting under the stage lights, and the audience's whispers filled the room with anticipation. Every step toward the piano made her heart beat faster, but she reminded herself that she had prepared for this moment. She walked to the bench, her fingers brushing the polished wood of the piano. The instrument was larger and more imposing than any she had played before, but she felt comforted by the familiarity of the keys beneath her hands. She adjusted the sheet music and took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. The murmurs of the audience faded as she focused on the music, letting every note, every pause, and every chord live inside her. The first notes were delicate, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters of the room. Slowly, the music grew stronger, more confident. The audience's skepticism began to fade as they listened closely. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, yet each movement carried emotion that could not be measured by skill alone. She let the music guide her, feeling every rise and fall, every nuance of expression, and she poured herself into the performance with everything she had. Some in the audience leaned forward, captivated by the story she told through the piano. Others had their eyes wide open in surprise, realizing that the quiet young pianist before them had the power to command such emotion. Whispers of admiration began to spread quietly, replacing the earlier skepticism. She could feel the energy of the room changing, the atmosphere shifting from doubt to awe. With every note, she built a bridge between herself and the listeners, connecting through the universal language of music. As she moved into the middle section of the piece, the tempo shifted, becoming more complex and demanding. Her hands flew across the keys, striking chords with power and precision. The room felt alive with sound, every note carrying both technical mastery and deep feeling. She noticed subtle changes in the audience. Some were holding their breath, some had their hands clasped, others had tears in their eyes. She realized that her music had reached them on a level words could not. The more intense passages flowed seamlessly from her fingers, showing not only her training, but her deep understanding of emotion and storytelling. Every crescendo built tension and release. Every gentle phrase allowed listeners to reflect and feel. She could sense the shift completely now. Those who had come with doubt now seemed mesmerized. The critics who had once been wary now watched with rapt attention, nodding slightly as they acknowledged her skill and expression. The whispers of admiration grew louder, spreading throughout the hall. Halfway through the performance, she allowed herself to truly feel the music, letting it consume her. She played as if the piano were an extension of herself, and the notes spoke directly to the audience's hearts. The room was silent except for the sound of her fingers dancing on the keys. Yet in that silence, she felt a powerful connection. Every glance, every expression in the crowd told her that she was no longer just playing. She was communicating, and her message was being heard clearly. The mockery she had faced in the past now seemed distant and meaningless. As the piece approached its climax, she intensified her playing, letting passion and technical mastery combine. Each chord reverberated through the hall, commanding attention. The audience, who had once doubted her, was now completely engrossed. Some faces reflected astonishment, some reflected joy, and some were moved to tears. The music filled every corner of the hall, creating a powerful, shared experience. She felt a surge of confidence, knowing that her dedication, practice, and perseverance had brought her to this moment. The final notes approached, and she slowed, letting the sound linger in the air. She played the last chord with deliberate strength, and the resonance filled the space completely. For a heartbeat, there was silence, a quiet moment where time seemed to pause. Then, the room erupted in applause, louder and more enthusiastic than anything she had ever experienced. People rose from their seats, clapping and cheering, and the energy in the hall was electric. She felt a rush of relief, pride, and pure joy, knowing that her music had touched every listener. The judges and critics approached her after the performance, their faces full of admiration. They praised her technical skill, her emotional depth, and the way she had told a story through music. Some admitted that they had doubted her ability to perform at this level, but her performance had left them speechless. Fellow musicians congratulated her, acknowledging that her dedication and passion had transformed doubt into awe. She realized that her perseverance, her willingness to face ridicule and fear, had allowed her to shine in a way that words could not describe. Backstage, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and elation. She had given everything she had, and the response had been overwhelming. The support she received reminded her that talent combined with hard work and resilience could overcome skepticism. She reflected on the moments of doubt she had faced in the past, the whispers and laughter, and understood that they had all led her to this triumph. The music had given her the strength to rise above ridicule and prove herself. Later, in the quiet of her hotel room, she replayed the performance in her mind. She thought about the faces in the audience, the way they had been captivated, the silence that had preceded the eruption of applause. She realized that her journey was far from over, but this moment had changed her perspective. She had discovered that true artistry was not only about skill but about the courage to express oneself and connect with others. She had learned that passion, practice, and resilience could transform doubt into admiration, and that mockery could never diminish the power of her own dedication. She played quietly on the small keyboard she had brought, savoring the sound and the memory of the performance. Each note reminded her that she had overcome fear and skepticism, and that her love for music had guided her through every challenge. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction and hope, knowing that she was ready for whatever came next. The turning point had arrived, and she had emerged stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever to share her gift with the world. In that moment, she understood that music was not just a passion. It was her voice, her strength, and her way to touch the hearts of those who listened. After the final performance, the applause had hardly faded, but she felt a calm sense of fulfillment washing over her. The stage that had once seemed daunting now felt like a place where she belonged. Her heart was still racing, not from nerves, but from exhilaration and pride. For months, she had faced mockery, doubts, and fears. Yet here she was, standing in the glow of recognition and admiration. Every note she had played had told a story, and now the story had reached the hearts of many. Backstage, judges, critics, and fellow performers approached her, offering congratulations and praise. Their words were sincere, filled with respect for her skill, dedication, and emotional depth. Some admitted that they had underestimated her abilities, while others expressed surprise at how a young pianist could command such power and beauty through music. She listened quietly, smiling and nodding, feeling humbled and validated. The recognition was not just for her talent, but for the courage she had shown in facing ridicule and refusing to give up. The journey to this point had not been easy. She thought back to the early days of practicing in her small room, the times she had doubted herself, and the moments she had faced teasing and laughter from peers. Each memory reminded her of the obstacles she had overcome. She understood that the path to success was paved not only with talent but with resilience, persistence, and the willingness to embrace challenges. Her music had become a reflection of her journey, each note carrying the essence of her struggles and triumphs. As she left the stage and walked through the halls of the concert venue, she noticed the expressions of the audience members who had been there to witness her performance. Many smiled warmly. Some approached her to express admiration and gratitude for the emotional experience she had provided. The power of music to touch people, to break through skepticism and reach their hearts, became more evident to her with each interaction. She felt a deep sense of connection, realizing that her gift was not hers alone, but something she could share to inspire and move others. That evening, she returned to her hotel room, carrying her instrument case and the weight of her emotions. Alone, she allowed herself to reflect fully on the journey she had undertaken. The feelings of doubt, fear, and ridicule now seemed distant, replaced by a quiet strength and a sense of accomplishment. She played her piece again on the small keyboard she had brought, this time without the pressure of an audience. Each note flowed naturally, carrying both technical mastery and emotional depth. As she played, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her music had the power to affect people in ways words could not. In the following days, she received messages and calls from people who had attended the performance. Some praised her skill and emotional expression, while others shared how her music had inspired them, lifted their spirits, or brought back memories of their own experiences. She was amazed at the impact one performance could have, and she realized that the ability to touch lives through music was one of the most profound rewards of her dedication. The validation was not just in accolades, but in the genuine emotional responses she had evoked. Despite the recognition and admiration, she remained grounded. She understood that her journey was far from over, that there would be more challenges, more competitions, and more moments of doubt. Yet she felt stronger, equipped with the knowledge that resilience, dedication, and authenticity could overcome skepticism and fear. Each performance was a chance to grow, to connect, and to share the music that lived within her. She began planning her next steps, thinking about the pieces she wanted to explore and the emotions she wished to convey through her music. She considered teaching others, sharing the techniques and passion that had guided her, and inspiring a new generation of musicians. The idea of giving back and nurturing talent gave her a new sense of purpose, reminding her that her journey was not only about personal achievement but also about the impact she could have on the world through her gift. In quiet moments, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. Mockery and doubt had been painful, but they had strengthened her, teaching her the importance of self-belief, perseverance, and staying true to one's passion. She realized that fear of judgment was natural, but it could never dictate her path unless she allowed it to. By embracing her love for music fully and refusing to be swayed by others' negativity, she had transformed challenges into opportunities and skeptics into admirers. Her family, who had once been cautious about her pursuing music, now looked at her with pride and admiration. They recognized her dedication, the sacrifices she had made, and the way she had overcome obstacles to achieve recognition. They no longer questioned her path, and instead offered encouragement and support. Their approval, while meaningful, was secondary to the inner confidence and fulfillment she had cultivated through her journey. The experience reinforced her understanding of the deeper meaning of music. It was not simply about technique or performance, but about expressing truth, emotion, and humanity. Each note she played carried a piece of her story, and when shared, it had the power to resonate with others, to inspire, to heal, and to bring joy. She understood that this was the true essence of being an artist, connecting hearts through the universal language of music. As time passed, she continued to perform, always pushing herself to improve and explore new pieces. She faced new audiences, some skeptical, some enthusiastic, but she approached each performance with the same dedication and authenticity that had carried her through her first major triumph. The lessons of courage, resilience, and self-belief remained with her, guiding her decisions and strengthening her resolve. Looking back on the journey from the small room where she had first practiced, to the grand concert halls where she now performed, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Every struggle, every moment of doubt, every hour of practice had contributed to who she had become. She understood that success was not simply about recognition, but about the personal growth and connections forged along the way. Her music had become a bridge between her experiences and the hearts of those who listened. In the quiet moments when she played for herself, she allowed the music to remind her of why she had started in the first place. It was never about fame or approval. It was about the joy, passion, and emotional connection that music brought into her life. She knew that as long as she remained true to her love for music, she could face any challenge, overcome any doubt, and continue to inspire others. Her story became an inspiration to many, a testament to the power of perseverance, courage, and authenticity. She showed that ridicule could be overcome, skepticism could be transformed into admiration, and passion could triumph over doubt. Every performance, every note, was a continuation of her journey, a reminder that dedication and love for one's craft could change hearts, including one's own. And in every piece she played, she carried the knowledge that she had not only proven herself to the world, but had also discovered the strength and resilience within herself to pursue her dreams fully.